Running Sentences presents All Hail Zip Zog, Part 10, Revelations. Zip Zog finally gives some explanation for all the good that it will do Rufus. This is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, events, and incidences, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, living, dead, real incidences, fictional incidences, and stories is purely coincidental. Copyright 2022, Michael Honore. All rights reserved. The sight of the moon and the sun practically touching, yet suspended in air somewhere millions of miles away, made Rufus stare. It was quite the sight. Time had stopped, and Rufus wondered if that meant him as well, as he could only stare and felt like he should move, but he didn't think he should, and he suspected it did not mean him, but he didn't want to move anyway, since none of this made any sense. Had the made-up language that Zip Zog chanted made all of this happen, or did it stop time? It definitely sounded like that weird busy print language that people used to fill space, but at the same time, just didn't make sense. Like, why would time stop? Well, that brought us a little bit of time, shall we say? Any questions, Mr. Rufus, my prophet? Yes, millions and none at the same time. Yes, well, I guess I shall start from the beginning then. This planet was discovered many years ago. As I said, we, the visitors, who you call gods, live in the slip world. Okay, what's a slip world? It is what we gods will call a planet that is operating in the same orbit as another planet, but on the opposite side of that one. Earth is in fact a slip world as well, but just humans occupy it and we gods occupy the other one. Rufus felt his legs giving away a little bit, so he sat down. His mind was taking this in, and acknowledging that it sounded possible, but just not plausible. A glance over at the god, who was studying the sun and the moon, sitting there in the sky, then just seemed like something was wrong. Rufus squinted his eyes to look just to the other side of the sun, maybe see if there was a shadow of a faint moon beyond or something beyond, but you couldn't be sure. So what does this all have to do with how things have come to be, then, Zip Zog? Ah, yes. Well, when we arrived, we found it had been abandoned by creatures and was being rebooted by itself. Well, we decided we would watch over as things came to be and how we might affect them. We, by the way, were just traveling through space, bored out of our gourds, as humans might say, when we decided to stick around and found that because of some strange chemical reaction in the air, that we could make things happen to you humans. So we became gods, and we began shaping things up. Why would you do that, Zip Zog? The god began pacing about the place, studying the sky and then looking over at Rufus and then back towards the sky. Oh, if you were suddenly granted the ability to stay alive for a long time and do things magically on a whim, wouldn't you do it? Yeah, I guess so. So we did, Rufus. Mostly as an experiment to see what would happen to the creatures who were coming around in this new rebooted world. There were some failures before humans took hold of this planet, but then once we introduced ourselves to you humans, and our abilities compared to you, well, it's sort of easy to see how things came about the way they did. We were mysterious and powerful, and you were humans. Rufus could definitely see how this was a fact, and he was ready to accept that, but still, it sounded too sci-fi fantasy novel for his liking. I suppose I should also tell you that this is your timeline, and it did have you born in it, but you died about a year ago, thanks to a freak but godly accident. Meaning you. Yeah, but do you want to see your friends, by the way? I think we have a bit of time before this stop undoes itself and sends us hurtling towards the end of time, so to speak. Are they at least okay? I mean, not strung up or in the ground or something like that? Zip Zog pulled a face that made Rufus' stomach sink. Bad things had happened, and now he was about to see what it was that had happened. He could, of course, say no, but it would feel wrong to say no. On the upside, Ryan isn't far away. The downside is that you won't like seeing him. I guess we have to go and see them, then. Rufus's shoulders had sunk down as he got up from sitting and made for the door to get back into the church. Zip Zog was by his side, gently patting him on the back, trying to cheer him up. Back inside, Rufus found himself fighting back his own imagination on where and how badly life had turned out for his friends. They'd headed for the stairs and started down with Rufus doing his best to think of anything or any questions he might have. Zip Zog, since, you're kind of really aliens, aren't you? Did you help build the pyramids and shit like that? Those things. Do you know what happened? No, obviously not. Why? What happened, God? We were being careful at the time, directing our people to mess about how we could mess with humans, but, not too much messing with humans. When in came another race of aliens, and they came in behind our backs, helped build the ones in Egypt, when we were busy elsewhere helping other people. Then when we discovered what had happened, they had already gone on to Asia to do work there. We chased them there, only to find that they'd went to Central and South America, or what you now call Central and South America. By the time we got there, the fuckers were gone. Oh, well, I guess that explains that. They did sort of do a decent job building up the pyramids, though. No, they did not. How can you say that? They did, when one of the things they should have made sure of was that the exterior could not be taken away. Those stones were stolen away the second no one was looking. You need to make sure that shit can't be moved except by extraordinary circumstances. Half of the pyramids were stolen away because people needed them elsewhere. They couldn't keep nice things. Rufus was nodding along. He'd gotten himself into a silly conversation, with only himself to blame for it, but it helped as he arrived at the end of the stairs to be able to think of other things. He waited once down there for Zip Zog to take the lead and show him where this god wanted to show him. They wound up heading back down to the main area of the church, and then outside for a brief stint, while heading towards a separate building from the main church. Zip Zog was breezing through the front door, with Rufus following, and they down a small hallway to another door. This one on their left. Zip Zog stopped, with concerned look, and a sigh as he then opened it. Rufus closed his eyes, preparing for the worst as he went in. He almost felt like he should not open his eyes when he got inside. And, well, he wasn't sure if he was inside or just in the doorway or still outside, since he had closed his eyes. Eventually, though, he slowly cracked one eye open, and then the other, as his stomach tilted downward. There were rows and rows of large crucifixes here, all adorned with people. Ones who seemed like they'd been alive at some point, and were actual people. Rufus felt his stomach churn at the thought that Ryan might be up on one of them, and he looked at Zip Zog, who shook his head yes. 3 quick steps backwards were not done in nearly a quick enough fashion for Rufus as he fled the room. The need for air and to keep his stomach from releasing itself staggered Rufus as he got out into the hallway. He moved about this hallway drunkenly, trying to find his own way from the mess and the headache and the sight that he'd just seen. Standing up straight did not feel like it would happen either, as he found himself bracing against another wall, and then fearing that being near another doorway might lead to another such room, and wasn't sure if he should be even bracing against the wall for fear that he was touching something he shouldn't be. What happened here? Well, humanity happened. It stopped looking to help and went towards only helping oneself. It's been on that path for a long, long time. Unfortunately, we've been trying to stop it. It's just now coming to a head. That's why we've been trying to create religions, old and new forever, to help direct people towards what they need to do. Though there are some enterprising humans that have taken to creating such things just for themselves without our influence. Wait, how does religion stop this situation? Rufus was now leaning his back against the wall for support, having pushed his thoughts away. His hand waved towards the outside where the gloomy day/night stood frozen for however long. Oh, the idea has always been that a small amount of balance in the other direction, and that spreading through humanity would help balance things. You do good for humanity, humanity repays you. You know, it's a back and forth as people pull towards themselves and then helping others. Months before the world is to end, humans are that powerful enough that, we can stop our own departure. Well, there's been a lot of right things and wrong things done through history. Small acts can help immensely, though. There were wars fighting against putting people into slavery, or the wholesale execution of others for believing in different religions, although then you also let modern slavery happen, and you also let, the whole sort of keeping other people of different skin colors down for a really long time and still kind of doing it. And, of course, modern wars over goods happening and military things happening. It's all very complex, but things are tipping out of balance now because you don't have enough people trying to push towards being good anymore. Oh, God. Rufus came a little bit off of the wall and was rubbing his face, trying to understand the whole situation. I think I see what you're saying, but it is a bit much. Yes. Well, sorry about all of this, but our ways of not telling our prophets what was going on has always worked before. We just sort of showed them that they needed to help us, and they helped. Now, though, it seems cynicalness has taken a far greater hold of things in humanity. Rufus, having regained a bit of control of his legs, eased himself off the wall as he shuddered and looked at the nearby door that had held all of the crucifixes. Even though he wasn't sure he had seen Ryan in there, he could picture his friend up on a crucifix clearly. He shook his head, trying to get rid of this image. Is Finn... He pointed towards the door. Her. She isn't in there. But she is also not in a rather good state. Do you wish to see her? With his heart aching, Rufus nodded. All it took was a blink, and Rufus found himself back outside, standing on some sort of balcony. One that had a cage covering it, but had great sight lines for those that wanted to look at the bleak side of a city that he'd called home. The sun and the moon were still frozen in the sky as he glanced about to see and to figure out where he was. And from the looks about in front of him, there was no sign of Finn. So he turned and saw a gaunt figure sitting in a chair, curled up, staring at the sight before her. It looked like his friend Finn, but Is that Finn? She can't hear you, Rufus, and yes, that is her. What happened to her, and why is she in what appears to be, if I'm looking at this place correctly, a mental hospital? I need answers before I start feeling sick at the sight of what's happened. Please, tell me anything. A mental breakdown. Shortly after your death, she simply stopped computing what was going on. Nearly walked into traffic one day. Your friend Ryan helped get her set up in this place, where she has seen some semblance of life. Jeez, that sounds... Yes, humans are fragile creatures, especially one's mind. Rufus went towards Finn, holding out his hand to touch her, but held back at the same time. It felt wrong to just reach out and grab at her, and felt like it was not her at the same time, and so his hand fell back down towards his side. What happened to Ryan that put him on a crucifix? Ah, yes, well, he went to work for the church that we visited to be able to pay for Finn's needed help. I tried to be a preacher for them, but they had other plans. I do believe our friend, the god Tina, had a part to play in the matter, but, she did appear briefly in the church scrolls, and then last time I checked on them, and then those magically vanished. There was a turning feeling in his stomach at that thought, and it made Rufus severely unhappy. He did his best to collect himself and look further around at the dark, grey stone building and the balcony that they now stood upon. How was he supposed to get out of all of this? He could easily agree to being a prophet now, but it wouldn't do a lick of good. The world was ending a few months after he died, a year after he died, some point after he died. What good was one person trying to change the world going to do? Okay, Zip Zog, you've won, but I don't know what you want me to do that will actually do anything. Ah, so you are willing to help spread the word about a new religion. Sure, if that's what it takes to save people. I'm not going to convince anyone to join me in this quest of yours, though, aside from maybe Finn and Ryan, until they both get bored and probably move on to other better things. Oh, ye of no faith in yourself. Kindness will be met, and it will bring about what we need. Rufus was shaking his head now at this, but he shrugged as well. Yes, but how does one changing the world in a few months stop this sight from happening? He pointed towards the sun and the moon, still sitting in the sky, frozen, looking close to one another, but still millions of miles apart, probably. His hand waving at the sky, trying to point towards the sun and the moon, was not working, as he was just pointing off towards the sky, and Zip Zog stepped over and corrected where his hand was pointing. That is a bit complicated. You don't know how to do it, do you? Other than be kind and rewind. Rewinds never work out that well for gods. They have a habit of changing things for the worse. Rufus could only stand there, hoping that some other explanation was coming forth. It did not appear to be happening, so he took a few steps, just to move, just to do something, and to figure out what his own next step was going to be, as you walked about this caged-in balcony. Zip Zog, you said that this was a rewind, but you threw us forward in time to show that I wouldn't exist? Well, yes, slightly. Can you just fucking explain without vagueness, please? It's a bit complicated, so this life, as it appears, is mostly made up of what people see in the future, in their imaginations. Us gods, cannot actually move time forward and then backwards, or backwards and then forward. It simply isn't in our power as gods, or whatever this atmosphere grants us. We can't even create things. But that's another bone you have to pick later, with many people who say we created the Earth. What we are seeing is a potential future, and not an actual, that could very likely happen. So it might not be world-ending in a few months or a year's time, but a lot of people do see that coming towards them. Then again, I think a lot of people always see the world coming to an end, no matter what. And, they keep predicting it again and again and again. Rufus's head was spinning round and round, and so he stopped walking around and leaned against the wall of the metal cage guarding the balcony. Wait, heaven and hell exist, but you didn't create that? I mean, I saw them for myself, right? Or was that just my imagination? Please tell me it wasn't just imagined by me. Oh, that's real enough. Remember how I said that there was a planet on the opposite side of the Earth's orbit, a slip world, mirroring this one, but it is a bit different. It's where we gods, or aliens if you like, have settled down. And unlike this planet, it doesn't spin around and around, so there's a dark side, which is hellish and mean, and then there's a bright side, which we consider heaven-like. Souls have occasionally wandered once they have passed this earth, and they somehow come there. I don't get it, but they just sort of sometimes get over there, and then they get trapped, and, well, we have to do something with them. The only thing Rufus felt like doing was giving Zip Zog his dirtiest of looks. Not that it would have any effect, but still, all of this was imagined, and maybe all of this was just a lot to take in, and what was in front of him right now was imagined? It didn't make sense, but it made sense, and he kept arguing back and forth in his mind. Yes, all imagined. Mostly by the people around us, by the way, and one of my powers allows me to magnify that, per se, and put it before us. Similar to other situations. Wait, do you mean the whole trip to the jungle? I guess, quite an imagination you two do have. Though you did fall asleep watching a crappy movie about a bunch of people stuck in a jungle facing challenges, which kind of made it easier, since it was playing in your imaginations at the same time. Then how did you get us to, Ryan's place after? Yes, that was a simple teleportation trick, we know. We can drop you off in places. Sort of semi-woke you up, and then transported you through an area, and then you opened the door to Ryan's place. After I unlocked it, of course. The feeling like he'd gone mad and wanted to climb the damn cage and jump from the highest point was overwhelming for Rufus. He felt tricked, done dirty, and worse, he'd already said he would be the prophet for this mad alien god. Well, fine, Zip Zog, you've trapped me, and so what now? Do we blink and suddenly I'm back in hell, or wherever I was left, or am I to spread the word of God, of the good God, Zip Zog, telling us all to hail this new god? What am I to do? The god smiled, which only made Rufus reach for the cage walls to find that they wouldn't allow him to grasp it. The holes between the metal bars were too small to fit any fingers, or at least his fingers, and all he could do was claw at it to try and get away, but he was getting nowhere fast. What do you think you can do, Rufus? This was not what he had been expecting at all. A question to his question. What could he do? Nothing, really. He'd spent his life playing with technology, trying to make sure it worked when people broke it. Other than that, he just sort of went through the motions of living, aside from when he was with Finn or Ryan. From time to time, he always thought of himself as the epitome of boring and nonchalant, unrecognized and floating through until something happened. Then he'd float in a new direction away from whatever had just happened. What could he do? I guess I could be happy? Well, yes, that is one of the things you can do, Rufus. You do need that for life, and for everything in general, but what else? How can you help the people of the world realize that they need to do things? Rufus stared blankly. Help the people of the world. There are far too many cynics, and those who wanted to help themselves before helping other people. What could he do to change them? Well, nothing. They were the way they were, unsavable, probably. I can't think of anything that would work to get the masses to work together to save humanity and do something nice for one another. Zip Zog shook his head sadly. Blink, please. Instinctively, and not really comprehending why, Rufus did exactly that. A quaint church pulpit stood in front of him before he even knew it, along with a small wooden church that felt like it had been either lost in time or belonged to a rural county that kept it going because it's where they could go on Sunday to catch up with their neighbors. The pews and just about everything felt wooden, and he looked about for Zip Zog, but the god had vanished and didn't seem to be around. Think, Rufus, what does the world need? Rufus continued to look for the god, but he could not see him, although there was this weird dust that seemed to be circling about the place, and was slightly glowing. He wondered if that was where Zip Zog was, and he kind of expected it was. Why? He shrugged at his own question. Leaders is what the world needs. Yes, not everyone will follow what you say, but you need to push to get people going the right way around. We need people helping people to make the world better. Rufus was shaking his head. Yes, this was good. It was making sense. Somewhat. So it had to be at least somewhat true, right? Like Jesus. You know, he kept insisting that people help people. Was he real, by the way, and the whole flood thing, did that happen? Or was it just a rewind that you gods made and people pictured and everything like that? Zip Zog rematerialized, sitting on a pew looking rather annoyed in front of Rufus. One of the gods came up with that. Real person, no powers or anything like that, but when it was convenient, one of our gods made themselves look like this man when it was needed, and helped push people in the right direction. That's how we did the whole resurrection thing, by the way, 3 days later. The guy really did wind up getting crucified for that, though. A really terrible situation. You kill the prophet. No, we didn't. We told him and warned him to get out of there, and we told him that people were going to kill him because of what we had done. And, however, he was sold on the idea that since he was a son of a god, it was meant to be. So off he went to meet his fate. And now you want me to take the lead and take over for someone who was overly excited about making the world a better place? You know, you want me to be Jesus and march that drum? And that's very callous of you. No, we don't expect that at all. We want someone to help direct a small group, which will grow into a larger group of people, to help lead the right way of life. Help one another, and help grows on help, and help, and help, and help, and so on. Rufus had leaned against the pulpit to balance himself, and to give himself something to do as he took this all in. His mind was spinning, and the world felt like it was weighing on his shoulders, even if the spinning wasn't really happening, or even if it was all just his imagination. Or was it? If this was just imagined by people, what if life had actually really kept going? But from what point? How far back in time was he to go once Zip Zog decided he knew enough? You can still read my thoughts, right, God? The god got up from the pew, nodding his head, and then headed towards Rufus. How far back will I send you in time? Or where did all of this begin? When do you think it started, Rufus? I will tell you, though, however. We didn't find you at birth, and anoint you a chosen one. You're no Jesus, if that's what you want to know. Great. Well, I suppose that's a bit of a relief, and maybe good to know. And am I going to remember any of this? Oh, a bit of bits and bobs of it. It will be more of a feeling than anything else. You need to help others, perhaps not in an overtly religious manner or way, since you've made it clear that you aren't good at that sort of thing. So I get a small cult-like following to follow me to help people. That just sounds swell, to use a terrible phrase. Hey, don't be so cynical. I know your times call for such mannerism with how badly the government and religion have left the masses for dead and for a quick payday. I need a person who can see that there are good things out there. Some cynicism, of course, is fine, it's natural, but don't let it take over. I am trying, but as you said, life isn't easy these days. It has never been easy, Rufus. Why do people suddenly think that life is easy? You think that 1,000 years ago people had easy lives? They were living by whatever means they had. That's why you have us to look up to in case you need it. With firm steps, the god began circling Rufus, which made him suspicious that something was about to happen to him once again. He felt torn about all of this because he'd agreed to help, but he still wasn't sure what he was to do. Are you still going to be a part of things, or do you hide in the distance like most gods, or like, my neighbor? You know, watching but not acting on the terrible things that happen. Which, by the way, why haven't the gods stopped some of the crap that has gone on? Also, stop going around and round. Zip Zog paused for a second, but did not stop, and instead increased his pace going round and round. If gods were suddenly to appear around, were suddenly to come around, per se, telling you to stop, would you believe them? You didn't believe in me for a long time. Hell, it would probably just be called an alien invasion, and that you people must fight off these invaders. It was much easier as a god when people couldn't travel as easily or talk to one another as easily for us to do such things. But now, us showing up would probably cause a war, and we don't want a war, we're trying to save you. Why do any of this then, aliens? People, why are you here? The chimes of the church had begun to ring softly, and drew both of their attentions towards them off the front of this church. Why stop at this planet and help them, other than the godly powers that were granted to us by the strange chemical reactions we have to the air, or atmosphere maybe? It was to help a young, struggling planet with a new life form. So when the time came for you people to travel out to the great bounds of space, you could do it with kindness. Do what we did. Help others. Hasn't worked out well in the end for us. We're still trying to get you people to be better, but no task is easy. And we keep trying to work out the worst parts of you, so that when time does come, we can send you off happily. The chimes and bells continued to grow louder. I'm taking it that that's a sign that it's time to go. Yes, it is time for you to wake up, and have mostly forgotten your journey, but you will remember that bits of it, just what you need. It'll be up there in your mind. Zip Zog walked over and touched Rufus's nose, which sent him back a few paces, not from the force of it, but he was surprised by the action. I have booped your nose. What? What was that for? It's the wake-up button on humans. Boop their nose, and in a blink of an eye, they're wide awake. No, it is not. All Rufus felt like he could do was back up and try and get away, and also to put his hands over his nose to protect it from unwanted boops. The sound of chimes continued to ring louder, growing in its cacophony. Oh, and one last thing, Rufus. Just a small reminder to make sure that whatever your new religious thing is, or just helpful thing is, even if it isn't religious, make sure that you don't have any barriers to it. Too many times religions say that only certain people get to join, or that they must be born into it through being a man or a woman. Shit makes no sense whatsoever. Why cast aside people? You want people to join your religion? Why say that certain people aren't true to the whole religion? Rufus blinked. He found himself staring at his doormat with its beaten and worn greeting. Welcome, one and all, to the place that you'll hate. He realized that his hands were around his nose and not fishing out his key from his pocket. Why, he could not say, but there was a nagging thought in his mind that something had happened to him. But he couldn't tell what it was. He shook his head and took his hands down and went grabbing about for a key in his pocket. And then when he went to unlock the door, he grabbed at the doormat. It didn't feel right for some reason to have it there, just lying there. It just was weird. It was wrong, wasn't it? He headed inside once the door was unlocked. And it being a late evening, he dropped the doormat in his mudroom and shrugged his way out of his jacket and shoes. Exhausted yet happy, his weekend was upon him as he trudged his way towards his living room in his apartment, with something itching at the back of his mind. Whatever it was wasn't coming out of hiding, and he shrugged. It can't have been super important if it wasn't up front and screaming at him that he'd forgotten something. His walk across his living room and kitchen area was short, because he came to a stop, watching his TV screen flicker. It was on, but had he left it on? He wasn't sure. He couldn't remember the last time he'd used it, so why was it flickering? He went over to the remote and, noting the small, golden-looking statue of a church on the coffee table next to it. He didn't really register it, but he saw it as he turned the TV off. His mind was too frazzled to care much. Whatever it was that was bothering him, and there was definitely something there, he figured a good sleep would do away with the fog that was keeping it from coming to the front of his mind. His alarm went off in the late morning, which surprised the still sleepy Rufus. He hadn't expected to get up early, since it was his weekend, and those were meant for sleeping in. But he was up, and didn't feel like falling back asleep, and his mind wandered back to what was wrong. Something felt different, and he felt it last night, and like goodness or something. He got out of his bed and went through his morning routine, still unsure of what the problem was, and other than goodness, maybe, something, and hoped that this would clear his mind. But the listlessness continued, even after taking a shower and having walked about his apartment for most of the morning, looking for things to do. He cleaned up his place a bit, but that hadn't satisfied him, and he kept pressing on, trying to find other things. So a slow, long walk towards Roxy's bar to see Finn seemed to be the right thing to do. She would help him sort out his thoughts. She was sort of good at that, always helping him when he got stuck on a thought. And so he stood in front of Roxy's gastro pub bar place, staring at the front entrance with an itchy mind that wouldn't tell him anything whatsoever. Rufus breezed past the host guarding the podium between the bar and the table seating area for the food section of the gastro pub. He headed straight for the bar. He did not see Finn anywhere around there, though, so he continued onward towards the new glowing neon light and towards the back. It was lit up, saying arcade. As he arrived at the doorway to the new arcade, he jumped back as Finn emerged, looking rather busy, with a bunch of papers and folders in her hands. When she looked up to see what was going on, she, too, jumped. "Rufus, did you come to see the new arcade?" No, well, yes, I was curious about it, but I came to see you, actually." "Me?" Yeah, but, you look, kind of busy?" He pointed towards the papers in her hands, which she glanced down at, and then shuffled about in her hands, before then moving to hold them behind her back. "Nope. Well, I mean, the bar always keeps me busy, tending to people, but, I can set aside some time for you. Is something wrong?" Yes, but not entirely sure that yes encompasses it." "Sounds like you need a drink and someone to listen to you. Well, I guess that's my job." She began walking towards her bar, and he was in lockstep with her. There is one other thing not related to said issues scratching at my mind and worrying me. The walking stopped, and she looked over at him, curious. It's just that I want to hang out with you sometime. Just, the two of us to maybe get to know you better. If, you're interested in such a thing happening. We hang out a lot, Rufus. Well, yeah, we hang out, but it's either here or with your friends or with Ryan. It's just not just the two of us. I would like it just to be the two of us, potentially. So don't mind the friend thing. I would love to. I was giving you a little bit of a hard time, by the way. She started walking again, and he gave a sheepish blush. Right, yeah. Totally didn't start worrying, panicking, and that I was getting things mixed up. No, didn't happen. Not on my side. She grinned and continued heading for the bar, as he shook his head, grateful, and sighed a small victory sigh. Where all of this had suddenly come from out of him, he had no idea, but he had wanted to say something for quite a while now, just could never figure out the damned words. But now they were out, and she seemed all right with it. So that was good. Maybe. Hopefully. His heart kept skipping a few beats through that thought, and felt like he was now racing to catch up with life, as he, too, hurried over towards the bar. Though it was only a few short feet away, Rufus felt the distance was long and a hard one to get to the bar. His world had felt off for the last several hours, and now he'd gone and asked out Finn. Sort of. Well, he hadn't said go out per se, but it counted. In his mind. His mind only affirmed that thought as he saddled up to a seat at the bar, and Finn dropped off her papers somewhere near the end of the bar and under it before coming over towards him. I do have something to attend to, first, but I will be back in a few seconds. Yeah, fine by me. I do need a few seconds to collect my thoughts. Though she left after this and Rufus continued to sit there, he did not get the chance to collect his thoughts. A hand slapped his back and caused him to turn and look over. There, by his side, was Ryan. Well, look what I have found sitting by the bar. Hello, Ryan. How are you? Good. You seem to be in a good mood. Sort of good, and mostly lost in thought that I've been trying to figure out something at the back of my mind that's not coming. Oh, can I help? Maybe. I asked Finn to listen to me and help me out, so maybe you can be of assistance as well? Ooh, maybe I should go then. I mean, I don't want to intrude. Finn chose this point to come back to and stood before them. She put her hands on her hips and with a skeptical look at them, forced them both to look at her. What are you two doing? Ryan here was offering to help let me think out loud and then decided to run away because he was afraid it would ruin the moment between us, I guess. Between the two of us, maybe? I don't know. 2 heads are better than 1, and Rufus has asked me out, so you don't have to worry about this being an awkward moment for you, Ryan. As the 2 of us potentially don't flirt. Ryan, who had sat down, looked at them skeptically, and he was half up because of his comments that he was getting ready to leave, and his mouth was flapping about a bit, trying to say something, but seemed to have lost the ability. And now that we have gained a second mind to listen, though a bit broken at the moment, Ryan, please gather yourself. What is your problem, Rufus? Well, it's going to sound odd, but I have the feeling that I'm supposed to do nice things. Shouldn't we all be doing nice things? Yeah, but that's the thing. Most of us aren't, and we simply expect everyone to be nice to us and for us, and we don't go out of our way to do nice things. We don't put any effort to do nice things. And even those that do are looked at harshly and strangely by everybody. Well, yeah, I see what you mean, Rufus. People are angling for some sort of reward down the line kind of thing, right? I mean, look at some religions. They have to dangle getting into heaven to get people to do nice things to one another. Even that gets twisted about by some of those who aren't so nice. Ryan had come back around and leaned forward onto the bar. As he firmly sat down again, Finn put 2 glasses of soda before them. If we're thinking about things, no alcohol. It only leads us down a road of doom and gloom. Plus, I don't want to count alcohol and have to explain it away. People are so noisy when they own bars. Rufus slapped his hand down on the bar counter. Even more proof. You want to do something nice, right, Finn? But you can't do it for various reasons, like comp a drink. I feel like people should be out there doing nice things for people and helping out the world just because. Have you been having a religious epiphany, Rufus? Because that's what it sounds like. Yeah, I'm with Finn there, Rufus. It sounds like you hit your head really badly and you've come up with a cult-like idea. Be nice, and everybody comes to you and then suddenly they're all drinking punch. No, I'm... not that we're judging you for it, but it would be a bit complicated to just go out and do nice things for people. What? Are you two suddenly saying that complicated things are not worth doing? I mean, people help people all the time with small things, and sometimes even big things. All I'm suggesting is that we find a way to do it more often than not doing it at all. His 2 friends looked over at one another with cautious looks, one that told him they didn't quite buy what he was saying, and Rufus sighed. It was a mad idea, but it felt right, so how wrong could it be? Okay, Rufus, so what exactly are you going to do to be nicer to people? Is there some sort of grand plan to this, or are you just throwing it out there? Rufus blinked, and then blinked again. He hadn't actually thought much about what to do about it. It's just an idea, and had been there, and he was now only beginning to realize what it was. But what to do about it? He glanced between the curious faces of his friend, and offered a shrug. I don't know. Maybe set up some sort of organization that goes about doing nice things for people. A charity? Rufus offered another shrug to Finn. Rufus, my friend, it sounds silly and not well thought out at all, and I love you as a friend would, but... Yeah, what, Ryan? What's the big problem you have? I mean, if you're doing this, and I might be willing to go along with it, that is, if you perhaps need a slick, go-to, charismatic person to do all of the talking for you to draw the people in. I mean, that's me, by a long shot. You want to help, but only so you can get the ladies. Is that what you're trying to say? No, if the ladies decide to come. I mean, if the ladies decide to come talk to me after I've given a great speech and tried to wow them and get them to do nice things, then that's their own choice, right? I wouldn't do it just for the ladies, though. I'd be there to help out, lend my voice, do nice things just to do nice things. Be a great, nice person who comes to save the day and helps people discover that they should be nice to one another. Rufus shook his head as Finn took away the still full glass of soda in front of Ryan. You still sound like it's all about you, so no drinks for you, Ryan. Aww. Now that we've gotten that out of your head somewhat, Rufus, we do need a plan, and so where do you plan to go from here? He took a swig of his soda and leaned against his arm on the bar, putting his head down on his hands. I have no idea. It's an idea, and it needs money. But even if I had money, people would use that as an excuse that we're doing something wrong and cult-like, probably. Well, then let's just start small around town. What do you say? He looked up a bit surprised. You want to help out? Yeah, I can help out. Plus, I can get to see what madness is working in your brain so that I know where I stand in all of this. I guess that's fair, and I guess everyone is just going to do this for their own reasons, not just to help out. His 2 friends kind of shrugged, and so he shrugged as well and took another sip of his soda. Something about this felt distinctly right to him, and he was happy that it was going reasonably well. Well, yes, but also if we do this, then it is to help out, and, things aren't simple black and white, We can't, everyone is going to have a reason for doing something. Rufus flinched. He knew this answer, and yet he'd walked right into it. Why hadn't this answer come to his mind? Was it too busy coming up with smarty answers that he hadn't stopped himself to think for even a few seconds about what other reasons people might have? Okay, true. We must accept that all efforts to help come with some sort of reasoning as to why, and even if they are a little bit to help oneself, that isn't necessarily bad. I guess the better thing to do would be to make sure that everyone understands that we are doing this to help the world, make it better, and, the good, nice things make us feel right. Right, folks? He turned to look over at his friend Ryan, who had vanished off somewhere. Rufus guessed towards the arcade, but it didn't matter. Well, I guess Ryan is mostly with us, so he doesn't really need to worry about that. But, and do you have any objections to any of this, Finn? Anything bothering you about this? Your job, potentially? What are you going to do? Are you going to stop working at IT at the office just to do these good deeds, or do you do both part-time? Oh, yeah, it is going to cost a lot of money to do good deeds. As I said, I suppose I will keep working until I have a better idea of how exactly this whole thing will work out. And we'll probably need to find a new apartment or a roommate to do the whole keep a roof thing over my head. Yeah, this is really going to get complicated real fast, just to help people. She nodded as Ryan came back eagerly smiling and with his phone in his hand. I've had a great idea, and I happen to know the right people. Okay, Ryan. How do you know the right people? Also, why do you know the right people? Rufus had turned to look over his shoulder at his friend, who was now quickly approaching. He shook his head at the sight of the excited man, who seemed a bit bouncy in the way he was coming up to them. I don't think you need to ask, Rufus, as Ryan is probably all too eager to tell us how he is solving our problems. Their friend stuck his tongue out at them as he slid back into the bar stool seat. I'd say I wouldn't tell you now, since you're making fun of me, but I know a lady. Oh boy, here we go. Hey, shush you. Let me say that I know a fine young lady, or a fine lady, who has a fair amount of money, and is looking to use it to help people. She's and she wants to help people who have helped her, or just help people, I guess. I don't really know fully yet. I gave her a rough estimate of what we are trying to do, and she seems rather keen to hear a bit more. They all sort of sat there, looking at one another, trying to take this all in. Finn was the first to break out of her thoughts, reaching below the bar and drawing out 3 shot glasses, and a brown bottle. Well, I guess we're going to do this then? To new adventures? She poured out 3 shots and slid a glass over to each of them. The 3 all took up their glasses and raised it in cheer, Ryan pushing his the highest. To doing good and nice things, then. Yes, Ryan, and to life, adventures, love, and perhaps just maybe trying to make the world a little better place for everyone. End of part 10 of All Hail Zip Zog. The end of All Hail Zip Zog. Thank you for listening.